Welcome everybody to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host Trey Holiday, and today is a very busy day as we knew it. It is Wednesday, August 5th, and we have a lot of clips to get into, so let's hop right into it. I gotta throw it over here to my guy, Big O on the scene. What's up, Big O?
Man, what's up, Trey? You were right. Today's a very busy day. We got a lot of stuff going on. You know, I know we usually do a lot of conversation.
Right.
We're gonna keep it short here, but I do want to first of all thank all of our viewers, our supporters. What did we get? Was this a tweet or this was a Facebook comment? Big shout out. Taylor Myers said so much anticipation. Can't wait for the show this morning. It's a big day for Seattle. And yes, it definitely is a big day for Seattle. We're going to jump right into the first thing here. I know it's lots of stuff about politics, but we've been kind of staying on message around the gun violence and the uptick of gun violence here in Seattle and King County. Prosecutor came out yesterday, Saddleberg, and he said that gun violence for the first 6 months of this year is up 21%.
Wow.
It's up 21%, and that 42% of the victims are aged 25 or younger, and 73% of the victims were people of color. We have a clip right here, actually, from King 5, where they talk to the prosecutor about the uptick in violence in King County.
Today, the King County prosecuting attorney is releasing numbers about gun violence so far this year. And as King 5's Natalie Swaby reports, the new data is disturbing.
The prosecuting attorney's office says in the first 6 months of this year, more people were shot in King County than in any of the previous 4 years over the same time period. Today, one Seattle mom says behind those numbers are families being torn apart.
It's horrible. It's really horrible.
Horrible that it keeps happening for Patrice Thomas. It was in 2017 that she received the call about her daughter.
You know, that was my only daughter. She's the oldest of.
Shay Rihanna was shot in Seattle and did not survive.
It's not that sick.
Then, months later, another crime scene, this time in Kent.
6 months exact. Got another phone call stating that my son, my oldest son, was shot, you know.
19-year-old Dwayne Tyson. And this May, she lost another loved one. Her cousin, Stephen Michael Perret, was shot and killed in Tukwila.
Because this gun violence is getting out of hand. It really is.
King County prosecuting attorney Dan Satterberg agrees and says it's happening at a time when coronavirus has slowed down trials.
This is adding to a historic backlog of felony cases in our court. We have more than 5,000 cases waiting to be resolved.
The data shows the number of shooting victims is up 21% from the county's 3-year average. So far this year, 42% of victims were under the age of 25. 73% were people of color.
You know, it's just 1 year compared to the next, so it's not a long-term trend, but it is a concerning thing that we've had almost as many homicides this year so far as we did all of last year.
Thomas says she wants to see more education for youth around this issue, and the prosecuting attorney's office says King County needs to expand its community partnerships and take a public health approach to the rising gun violence. In Seattle, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
Yeah, you know, I mean, while all these other things are going on, these pandemics, we definitely have an epidemic here in Seattle and King County in regards to gun violence. I think it was just 2 days ago. It was almost like there's 4 people shot in one incident in the South End, and then there was somebody else shot as well.
Yeah, and like she said, these are people's families that end up suffering again, more community members. And as we've seen so much of our community, particularly in the CD and Black community, be so displaced, we're seeing this happen all throughout King County. This is another thing that we definitely need to follow up with and figure out solutions around.
For sure. Mayor Durkin yesterday, her and Chief Best held a press conference mostly about the council, what the council is doing right now. And speaking of the council, they had opened it up for public comment. I believe public comment is now over. Then they were giving some speeches in there, and then they're getting ready to start voting on these amendments. But we'll get to that here later in the show. But they also, Chief Best and the mayor was presented a question by Carolyn Bick of the South Seattle Emerald in regards to protest and protesters and police accountability. This is Carolyn Bick's question from South Seattle Emerald, and here's Chief Best and Mayor Durkin.
All right, Mayor Durkin, Chief Best, I want to take this opportunity to ask about allegations raised by several protesters about the way SPD treated them on the weekend of the 25th, since only limited press was invited to the press conference last week. There are several videos of SPD officers once again using excessive force against protesters who appear to be doing nothing wrong, and the allegations are numerous and include corroborating reports from multiple people about officers taunting and mocking a young woman who repeatedly pleaded for her seizure medication and suffered multiple seizures while detained. When I asked SPD response of the allegations, the only response I got was that protesters should file complaints with the OPA. SPD media didn't even bother to ask what the allegations were, so I wanted to ask today, how are you going to address these allegations and hold these officers accountable? It seems to some that constantly telling protesters to file complaints with the OPA puts the onus solely on these protesters and the rest of the public at large to hold officers accountable when said officers are out in the field presumably acting under orders from SPD.
So I'm going to let the chief respond to that mostly, Carolyn, and I apologize you don't get follow-ups on this. First, I think that you saw that the city filed in court its brief in response to some of the allegations and video clips that seemed to show that there was unauthorized use of force, but the video clip itself was incomplete, and they showed that to the judge. I want to say that if there's any police officer who does use force inappropriately, the chief and I are united without any hesitation to say that officer will be investigated and this chief of police will hold them accountable. But we also know that last weekend that there was a series of events that were very challenging for the police department, including an arson that burned several trailers, attempted arson at a business that was broken into that had residential things above it. There were business owners who were assaulted, and the police precinct itself was subject to attack. So it was a very fluid situation. And again, the values of us are we will make sure that the very robust, independent, civilian-led accountability system works and has the resources it needs to work. And if there's any individual officer who's broken the rules, they'll be held accountable. And if the department as a whole has policies and procedures that need to be reviewed and changed because of that conduct, we now have 2 federal judges and the Office of Inspector General looking at those. And the chief will take all of that very seriously. Chief?
Yeah, Carolyn, thank you for your very lengthy question, and I agree with the mayor. She's covered a lot of it, but absolutely, there's some serious challenges that we faced over the course of these many demonstrations, many of them enumerated just by the mayor. The complaints have been made, the documentation has been filed in court. I have every confidence in our judicial system and in our processes that they will ferret out and get to the truth. And that's all we really want is the truth of what occurred. And if there were violations, I can assure you that people will be held responsible for it. We wholeheartedly, I personally wholeheartedly, and as an organization wholeheartedly support First Amendment free speech. But allegations of excessive force, dealing with the very volatile situation that we were addressing, will absolutely be reviewed, and we will make sure that the facts lead us to the truth.
And Carolyn, I just want to add 2 other things is I had not heard of the woman with seizures, and I don't know if the police chief did, but they will follow up on that to see what it is. Second is we are not leaving it just on protesters to file complaints. The OPA itself has initiated a number of complaints. The chief of police has initiated complaints. And I myself, the night after the pink umbrella video, met with OPA and OIG and then later with CPC and asked them to review our policies, procedures, and other issues related to crowd control. So we're not just waiting for people to step up and make complaints. We also are going to do everything we can to hold the department accountable.
All right, so there you see there's Chief Best and Mayor Durkin's take as far as protesters and use of force. And I guess we're going to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is the quintessential way that we see a lot of things happen in American politics, right? It's, you know, kind of the way of the media, right? The media trying to tell both sides. I love that Converge does that. It's always ends up like, where is the real truth at? So again, hopefully we can, you know, continue to follow this and really get to the bottom of it.
Right. Well, you know, Sade yesterday clearly had a very different point of view. The lawyer, Sade A. Smith, had a very different point of view than the mayor and the police chief, but as you would expect. So like I said, we'll keep an eye on that and see how it plays out. Now going to the big talk of the day, the whole city is abuzz right now because they're talking about right now they're getting ready to vote here shortly, and we're actually going to do a post-vote analysis. Me, Kevin Schofield from SCC Insights, and Marcus Green of the Emerald as soon as the vote is done. But another clip here from the press conference yesterday is Mayor Durkin and Chief Best, and basically the mayor's like, yeah, city council was wrong. You guys got out there, you promised all these activists that you were going to be able to cut by 50%. Now kind of you got to eat your words. And then Chief Best kind of scolded the council for not reaching out to her. She said there's really been no like direct communication, and also saying that the council is overreaching by actually trying to run her, you know, she said via the charter, she's supposed to run the police department and not the city council. Anyways, here's a clip right here of some of the comments yesterday from Mayor Durkin and Chief Best about the city council.
We think the council is looking in the right places, but in the wrong year. Council has made recommendations now in their new balancing packet where they basically admitted that the chief and I were right. You can't cut by 50% this year. And now, though, they want to reduce the force by 100 officers in 2020. But there is almost no way to cut those officers in the way that council has requested. So in 2020, if council really wants to reduce the force of officers by 100, let's acknowledge that it means that you're going to lay off the most diverse, our recruits, our new student officers. That's the reality of it. I have to say, I am disappointed, and I will say a bit surprised that to date, council has never reached out to sit down with the chief to hear her thoughts on how this department could be made better, how we can reimagine it, how we can make sure that the men and women of the Seattle Police Department can serve the people of Seattle. I would just urge council again, take some time. Take some time to get this right. I think it's a step forward that you've admitted you were wrong. You couldn't cut the department by 50% this year.
I am responsible for the public safety. It is not acceptable for the council to tell me what to have my officers and civilians do in the granular way that they have tried to manage. I am wholeheartedly dismayed at the apparent attempts to both direct the day-to-day operations of the police department as well as the concerted effort to dismantle almost every component of improvement in innovation and collaboration. It is almost as if some of these folks are just concerned that too many people actually support the police department and want to see public safety survive in this city. In closing, I just want to say the members of the Seattle Police Department, we work for the community. We're a part of the community and not apart from the community. This is all of us working together for community safety. And I remain optimistic about re-envisioning the future of our community, the future of safety with input from the community. Again, we are all in this together.
And I think we are right back where we were a few weeks ago when you had all these council members saying that they were going to cut it by 50% because that's what the activists were demanding of them. And they had no plan, and then once they looked at the details, realized they couldn't do it. In contrast to that, the chief and I stood before everyone, and it was unpopular in many quarters to say, we can't make those cuts this year. You have our same word that we will look next year to see what we can cut, and more importantly, what can we grow?
So you hear the mayor, you hear the mayor a few times in this press conference being like, I told you guys are sitting up there saying that you could get this 50% and X, Y, and Z, and, you know, and I mean, hear Chief Best saying that, you know, people shouldn't be able to run her office that's in the charter from city council. And of course, city council, they have a different take on that. But the concept of 50% right now, it doesn't look very likely as far as happening, even though 7 council members jumped out early and said that they supported it.
Right. It looks like it was definitely going to take some creative measures in terms of how to get there. I think a lot of council members maybe weren't aware of how much of the budget had already been spent. So there's a lot of things that they have to work through.
I'll be honest with you, and even away from the defund, you know, the city council members. I mean, it's just like when whatchamacallit, the law for banning tear gas and everything. I mean, it's very clear that the city council, because the police are under consent decree, they can't change a law without going through the consent decree. But they got the public all riled up, you know what I'm saying, passed it, I think, unanimously, just for a federal judge to smack it down and say that it wasn't the correct process. So, you know, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think a lot of times city council, they're good on the rah-rah, but it's like, you know, you guys might need to bulk up on the staff down there, you know, understand, like, you know, how things can actually become law and everything else, so it doesn't go to court and fail, or it doesn't get, you know what I'm saying, thinking that one thing can happen and it can't. But we got to keep it moving along this morning. So here's the big thing. So a lot of people are like, man, well, what exactly are these guys voting on? How's this going down? Everything else. So we thought, as usual, it would be a good service to the public to check in with Kevin Schofield of SCC Insight, and that's actually Seattle City Council, sccinsight.com, because, man, I mean, this what brings him joy is reading all of this legislation and everything else. I talked to him yesterday and wanted him to kind of tell us what the council was going to be voting on today. And we have that clip right here.
Friday, they started their conversation just walking through and having a first discussion about all the possible amendments to the police department's budget. Today, they finished that discussion. So we heard the first time they in public discussed different things, different options they were looking at. And on Wednesday, they're actually going to vote on these different kinds of amendments. They went through about 40 different possible things and lots of different kind of combinations. There's a lot of discussion around headcount cuts. And, you know, all together, you know, 4 of the council members, Herbold, Gonzalez, Mosqueda, and Morales, they kind of banded together and put together, you know, probably about at least half of the amendments that are being proposed were proposed by the 4 of them together, right? And a big chunk of them were around potential headcount cuts. They're looking altogether at cutting maybe about 100 heads, 100 positions out of SPD. And some of them are just general patrol. Some of them are things like, well, we know there's going to be a bunch of attrition this year, just because there's attrition every year. And, you know, there's a lot of criticism of SPD. And we know from press reports that there are police officers who are already submitting applications to like Bellevue Police Department and Washington State Patrol. So we know they're going to lose a certain number from that. But then we can also look at some kind of specific departments. So headcount cuts is one bucket. Looking at maybe a couple different departments they can transfer out, like the 911 call center. That's about 142 positions that would go out if they did that. The 4 of them also put together this kind of package about $17 million of money that could go into various kinds of community-led programs. And some of that they took from, you know, not headcount money in the police department, but kind of other buckets in the police department. And they also want to go take the last $12.8 million from the city's rainy day fund and use that for that as well, which, you know, is kind of a mixed bag, because I think the mayor was hoping there was going to be some money left over for next year in that, because, you know, we've got a revenue shortfall this year in the city budget, and they're thinking next year is going to be even worse. And now they've kind of like tapped that out. So that's a little scary. They're proposing to basically cut almost entirely the navigation team. There's a little bit of money in the parks department for navigation team, litter and garbage cleanup, and they leave that in, but they'd cut the 14 police positions in there. They'd cut the human services department's money. They'd probably move some of it over into more outreach work. It raises some interesting questions about, if there really is a homeless encampment that is like on a playground or blocking a sidewalk, then whose job is it to go clean that up? So they got some answers they still need to figure out around this stuff. But navigation team is definitely on the chopping block there. Councilmember Swant put together her own package of amendments that would this year do a full 50% cut. And it really looks like more than any of the other council members are really willing to bite off. And part of that is because, and they got in a big argument about this today, the city, most of the city council members are assuming that if they tell the police department, you have to cut these number of officer positions, well, because of the contract, they have to go negotiate that with the labor unions. And they figure at a minimum, that's going to take 3 months. Councilmember Swamp doesn't believe that. She's like, hey, look, we could do that in 25 days if we need to. We've done that with other unions in 25 days. But most of them think that it's going to take at least 3 months, which means the earliest those layoffs could really happen is November 1st. And that means the only thing you're going to get back in terms of money from savings is the last 2 months of pay for the year for that. And somebody did the math and said, if you basically on November 1st laid off all of SPD, all 1,500 officers, you still wouldn't cut their budget by 50%, right? So it's like, well, okay, so it's basically impossible at this point to, given the labor negotiations that need to happen, to do a 50% cut. So, Sawant would like to cut a lot of officers, a lot of other, positions in SPD, but it's still not going to get where they want to get. And then there's some kind of other things like just miscellaneous stuff. Like they want to break up SPD's budget in different ways so they get a little more transparency into like how much money is being put into the East Precinct versus the North Precinct versus the Southwest Precinct. Because right now it's all 5 precincts are all in one big budget category. And the city council gets to say how much money is in that budget. But right now, because all 5 are in the same budget category, they don't get to say, well, we think East Precinct has more serious issues right now, so they should get more police budget for patrol. And, North is doing better, so they maybe not need so much. I'm just making that up. Nobody has said specifically those things, and the city council really wants much more control, especially because a couple of weeks ago, Chief Best said, hey, look, if you make me do a bunch of cuts to patrol officers, I'm going to shut down the Southwest Precinct and kind of merge that back in with the South Precinct, which is, in 2003, the Southwest Precinct was created. Basically, it was spun out of the South Precinct. She said, basically, I'll undo that. I'll roll them back in together if I have to, which probably wouldn't be a great thing for the Southwest Precinct, right? So that's the kind of arguments that they're having. And so it was discussion today. We'll see. I think, if I were a betting man, I'd say the 100 headcount cuts are probably going to make it through. This proposal to get about $17 million for community programs. We'll see, the last of the money in the rainy day fund, they may pull that out. But other than that, there's going to be a bunch of money for that in there. Navigation team is probably gone, with the exception of the parks part. And the rest of it, I think we'll just have to see what happens.
What's wild is on YouTube, some of our most watched videos now are these videos of Kevin just explaining stuff. It tells you it's a big appetite out there for people who want to take sometimes this complex legislation and put it in bite sizes. And Kevin's actually really good at that.
Yeah, he really is, and gets it to the place where everybody really understands what's going on. I think there's been so much confusion, and it's great that, again, the Converge platform can bring that out, because I don't know anyone else who's been interviewing Kevin as much as you have, and it really presents itself with the opportunity for folks to understand really what's going going on behind the scenes.
Right. Well, you know, there's other people that are definitely analyzing the situation. I think the best thing about our platform is we're able to do it in a longer form. You know, we're able to give somebody 6 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes to be able to explain something in depth. But it turns out, I used to be one of those people, what can we get into 1 minute? But it turns out that the viewer is okay watching 10 minutes or 15 minutes if they're learning something, interested. So on that note, as soon as the city council vote concludes today, we're actually going to be going live. We have our special, the Defund SPD Seattle City Council Committee vote analysis. Very long name, but basically we're gonna be going live. It's gonna be me, Kevin, Marcus Green from the South Seattle Emerald. We'll see if we can get some people, different community organizations in there as well for some of their feedback. You know, so don't have an exact time for you, but next time you get an alert that we're live, that's what probably it's going to be. We're looking probably sometime this afternoon for the vote to actually occur, and we'll go from there. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, I will be sitting with Chukundi Salisbury. Last name might sound familiar. That's my big brother. Also, candidate for the 37th district, position number 2. If the numbers hold up, looks like he's making it through the primary, and so be on the ballot there in November. So we want to talk to him about some issues in the 37th district and what his vision is for the constituents there. We'll be right back. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
There's a lot going on. Are you ready? Ready to feel better, look better, be better? Drink water. Be ready for a pickup game. Insta-frame to work hard towards your aim. Drink water. Hydrate. Hydrate to invest in yourself. Cut down on sugar. Invest in your health. Imagine the possibilities and reach your potential. Who knows what's next? Be ready. Be hydrated.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Omari Salisbury, and I'm joined again today by my brother. What's up, Con?
What's up, big fella?
How you doing?
Man, I'm feeling great.
Okay.
I'm feeling great.
All right, I see the numbers are trickling in.
Yeah, numbers are trickling in. You know, it's kind of like doing a party, right? You know, you get the people to buy the tickets up front, and then you get the people that buy the tickets the day of.
Right. Well, see, Seattle, especially the 37th district and legislature and the D3 and city council, it's known for same day kind of voting. So right now, what percentage? And we're talking about in Chukundi, it's candidate for 37th district, state legislature, position number 2. What's your vote count right now, or your percentage right now?
Well, you know, right now we're just at 21.1% is
Okay.
where we at in the polls.
Okay.
Yeah, with about 30% of the polls counted. So we're just waiting for everything to come out this evening, and as the days and weeks go on.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. One thing is they're pretty efficient here with vote counting in
Shout
King
out
County.
to King County elections, man.
They
We have
get
a
it
great
done.
system.
Yeah, they get it done. So I got a few questions for you. You know what I'm saying? The first one is, right now it looks like you're gonna make it through and be on the big ballot here in November. But you know, there's a lot of people. Seven candidates there in the race, right?
Right.
Kirsten's the big vote getter right now.
Yeah,
you got another candidate, Andrea, who had actually dropped out, but her name was on the ballot.
Right.
But basically, there's 5 or 6 other people that garnered votes. What are you going to do to earn those the people that voted for the other candidates in the 37th?
Well, you know what? I'm just really out listening to people and meeting with folks, and I'm going to be talking with them about, you know, what did they see in those other candidates that they obviously didn't see in the vote leader that we can address in our campaign.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we're really building bridges and building coalitions.
Okay, and that's a unique perspective as well. You get me for a loop there. That's good. All right, so Andrea Calpain from Bird Bar Place. She was actually an opponent of yours early on in the race.
Right.
She removed herself from the race specifically because she felt that you were the person for the role. She asked people who were following her or wanted to vote for her to vote for you. She asked for people to as well as endorse you. What my question to you is do you think, one, that you'll be able to garner the support of people who followed Andrea, and also two, because she did endorse you but ballots were already out, do you think that the early voting has also been representative in the number right now? Because right now she's at 12% of the vote.
Yeah, so, you know, no doubt, you know, shout out to Andrea. She's been very helpful. I think that her endorsement definitely did help our campaign. But, you know, what I would say is that many of her supporters, just like many of ours and many of most people's, once you're locked in and that's your candidate for a particular reason, that's what it is. And so while she most certainly did go out of her way to make sure that people knew that she was out of the race, you know, perhaps there's a lot of people that didn't get that memo. We're all living in hectic times right now. And so if you know, got that memo that you were voting for her, you know, perhaps you were just locked in on that. So, you know, I do think that it helped us tremendously in terms of some organizational support. And I think that, yeah, those votes have fallen in with on our, you know, as we move towards November.
And is she now part of the team?
Yeah. So we're working with Andrea. She's actively sending out emails and talking with folks and working to, you know, to get us through November.
All right, so here we go. You know you can't come on the show and we not put you on some kind of hot seat here.
Hot seat, look at this. Woo!
So we did some unscientific street level polling that we did here, because actually some of the producers live in the 37th district. And feedback that we got here from our unscientific street level focus groups is that you, Kun, are the CD.
Right.
And you talk about that a lot, but how are you relevant to all the 37th? And have you been active in the district prior to your run? And how present have you been during your campaign? Now, that's like 3 questions, so I can break them all down. But first of all, man, how are you relevant to somebody who lives in Skyway and says that no candidates come and visit, or this and that and everything else, or lives in these other areas outside of the city center? Why should somebody even think that you even care about Skyway?
You know what? It's funny. I did a post the other day, and I picked up donations and talked to supporters across the district. You know, I picked up a donation in Broadmoor on Madison. Then I went to the Kingway Apartments. Then I went up to see Cleo in Skyway, you know, our favorite attorney, one of our favorite attorneys. Then I picked up a donation to talk to supporters down in the Landing in Renton. So I'm most certainly all over the district, you know, but clearly that's an opportunity for us to be able to amplify. I think that, you know, just as a person that's been a promoter for years, I just go place to place. And so we just need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I learned a lot yesterday in just a small conversation. People in Skyway, it's an old, antiquated way that they have to pay their utility. The utility bills are hella high. Their services,
Right.
because they're just in an unincorporated area, and so a lot of that falls in the county. But that being your district, is people in Skyway got grievances. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, most definitely. Well, so some of the viewers, and obviously you, because you're a family member, know that my mother lived in Skyway, and my brother does now. My other brother, Chukundi.
Big shout out to
yeah,
the broker.
too. So I'm consistently in Skyway all the time. In fact, during the pandemic here, before everybody was giving out masks, we were up in Skyway giving out masks to churches. And so definitely I led the march, the Skyway to Heal the Hood march. I was on stage there, and so I'm all over the district and trying to connect and listen to our constituents. To make sure that although I was raised in the CD, and I'm most certainly am a bulldog, as I live in the South End, and off of Brighton, and so I'm all over the district.
Right now, you said that you picked up a donation in Broadmoor.
Yeah.
Why did somebody in Broadmoor, people watching might not be from Seattle, it's actually a gated community on Madison, very close to Lake Washington. A lot of wealthy people live there. Why did somebody in Broadmoor want to donate to your campaign?
You know what? I think that people, the person in Broadmoor that donated to this campaign, they really spoke to my deep roots in the community. My affiliation with Garfield High School, and just being a 23-year city employee, a person that's really worked, in that type of position and has connected with community. As you may or may not know, I've done a lot of trail projects there in the Arboretum, trail projects across the entire district in Seattle Parks. And so a lot of people know my name from just being a project manager at Parks.
Okay, all right. That's the case. Since you said you've been listening, that's what you're saying, right? you said you've been listening to the constituents. I've been listening to the people.
That talk to me.
I've been listening to this and that.
But go ahead and tighten the screws, Big O.
I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
This is the best.
Let's get the mice going. Let's get the mice.
I got a lifetime of small beefs that I can take out for you right here.
Squeeze the juice. Squeeze the juice, baby. Let's go.
You said that you've been listening.
Yes,
and so all right, let's put it to the test then. What do people in the 37th want?
I'd say the overwhelming majority of people that I've been listening to, want to talk about gentrification. And when that's all the way from the CD all the way to Skyway. We've talked about upzoning. We've talked about, the ramifications. People want to be able to stay in their homes, and they want to be able to live in a thriving neighborhood and all the things that come along with that. Obviously, child care, obviously high quality paying jobs, obviously public safety, but people want to stay in place. They love where they live. They love their neighbors. They love their community. And they're worried about being displaced, especially with the specter of COVID and not being able to pay their rent or not being able to pay their mortgage. People want to age in place. They want to stay in place. That's what I'm hearing. And then, of course, all the things that wrap into that.
All right. Okay. Maybe you've been doing a little bit of listening.
Just a little bit.
But here's the thing, then. I mean, people in South Seattle and people really in a lot of parts of the 37th, that's a valid fear. It's not even a hypothetical, because we've seen what happened in the Central District. We've gone from almost an 80% African American neighborhood now to, depending on who you talk to, less than 15%. And literally 100% every day you see more and more developments going up that are market rate that people who work in the neighborhood can't afford to live there.
Yeah, and that's really why I started the My House Is Not For Sale campaign. What I'm finding is it's not just older African-American elders or people that are being tricked out of their homes. These are people that go to work every day and that are being displaced. You have young families that are being displaced, or, predatory lending practices, folks coming at them. And so, we definitely, that's a big fear. And it's not just a people of color fear. To keep it real, there's a lot of white people that are worried about being displaced as well.
Well, up here right now, where the studios at Capitol Hill, there's a lot of people. They'll tell you. Gentrification in Seattle,
real.
For years, it was a lot around color line.
Yeah.
And it's definitely people have been displaced across the color line now.
Yeah, most definitely. And like I say, it's really almost everybody. It's a socio-economic issue. It's not a racial issue. It was a race issue for us as African Americans, 10 and 15 years ago as we were getting displaced. Now everybody can get it. And that is the biggest concern across this, the 37th. I heard from a constituent, property taxes. I heard from a woman, I was listening on a long call. Thank you for calling if you're watching. I spoke to them for about 25 minutes the other day about how their property tax went up 30%. And what are we going to do for them to be able to age in place? They are on a fixed income. The husband's 82. The wife or the person that I talked to was she said she was 69. What are they going to do? And they're looking to us for answers and to be able to do things. So yeah, I'm listening.
All right. Okay. We'll see.
Woo. We're going to get some Chukundi juice. We're going to get a little bucket right here and it'll be like the cider press.
Let me shout out one of these directors real quick. Where are we looking like for the next package? Okay, so it's fine. Well, actually, this gives me more time to turn the screws on you.
That's right.
One of the things actually, so we do have, they're telling us we do have a little bit more time here.
Okay.
This wasn't one of the original questions, but this was the very first time that you came on the Morning Update show. It was around the issue of gun violence, because if you remember that it was one of Trayana's relatives that was murdered. And she took the next day off like she was supposed to. And I called you. I was like, man, I need somebody to co-host to come in to fill in for Trayana. But the issue that we were talking about then was gun violence. Now, I don't know if you saw the clip that we played here at the top of the show.
I did.
Homicides or shootings are up for 21%. 42% are people under the age of 25, and 73% are people of color.
Yeah.
The 37th district represents a big population in Seattle and across in the King County and other parts there. I mean, what's your take on this? Because this is something that is continuing. 4 people were shot the other day. Then a few hours later, another person shot. And unfortunately, we're still having this conversation.
Well, yeah, you know what, and it's a real challenge. And what I talk to people about all the time, I've been on my Twitter talking to folks. We're really talking, in this entire defund, I know you guys are going to do the thing later on about the vote, but we're talking about 2 different things. We're talking about, one is the failure for the police to be able to police themselves and stop killing us. That's Black Lives Matter, right? And then we're talking about 2, the failure of our elected officials and systems to be able to put the resources in our community so we can work on gun violence. Clearly, it is not just the police that is going to be able to solve gun violence. We've talked about this all the time. We talk about Tyrone Love. We talk about all the people that have been killed over the years, and it seems to be increasing, as the clip said. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And it cannot just be enforcement, right? It is not just the police. So, I mean, in that conversation, when I talk to folks about defund, it's also defunding so we can try a different method, because it's not working. I mean, a shout out to some of the people that are working on that. I know, we've had different leagues, and, I know the police department has the Explorer program and all those kinds of things. However, our young people, gun violence is so prevalent in our community. It is really time for us to do a radical change to address it.
Yeah, and so I heard you talk about police. I heard you talk about politicians. I heard you talk about systems, but I didn't hear you talk about moms, dads, community members, everyday people in the community. What role does everyday people have in this?
You know what? And we launched a campaign years ago, and we might have to bring it back. The silent war and the thou shalt not kill. We have to really look at ourselves in the community and say, who has the guns? Who has the guns? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and if each one of us could just reach out to somebody that we know is on the edge, right? Because we have to be our own community program. Honestly, at this point, the police are not coming to save us, right? We need some of their budget to help us save ourselves, right? But the police are not coming to save us. We have to save ourselves as a community. And that means reaching out to even one person, because we know, just like when you're in high school, you knew the person that had the gun, you knew the person that had whatever in their locker. Folks know what's going on. And so we just have to collectively step up. But again, we need some of those resources to be able to help us do that.
Right, man, I agree that resources are there, but I also want to look into the camera as well, is that, integrity, courage, the honesty, those are free. Mama used to say, you can pull them out the sky. Someone doesn't.
Common sense.
Mama always says, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing, and there's never a right time to do the wrong thing, and none of those things cost any money. And there has to be part of us ourselves is our community and everything else. If we're even if you get all of these things that people want, that has to augment the character. You see what I'm saying? It has to augment and amplify the character of our community, where we say that enough is enough. And by the way, we have the resources to be able to pursue that.
Absolutely, it's really about.
It's the same. It's the same thing. We had Brandon Hersey here from Seattle Public Schools, and Director DeWolf and Director Hampson, who are here. Man, they talked about all these different things that the school district's trying to do, and kids that are furthest from educational justice and everything else, and it all made sense. But I was like, man, what about the parents? What are you guys doing to hold parents accountable that have children in Seattle Public Schools? Do you guys doing a parent report card? Are you guys making sure, you know what I'm saying? Are we grading these parents, or because for the win has to be in a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, the first part of what you just said, it really comes down to our moral compass as a community, right? And so we have to adjust our moral compass. We know that, mass media, many of the things, we've been desensitized to violence, and that's why we just really have to adjust that moral compass on a daily basis. You have to remind yourself of what's right and when to do the right thing, like you just said. And so, again, I remember we tried to have a program, just speaking of that, Odo, we tried a program, well, it wasn't my program, but it was a different program at Franklin High School about 3 or 4 years ago, and they tried to have a parent report card, and they gave it, they rolled it out different, though. They rolled it out to just the kids of color and not all kids. And unfortunately, it was a great intention, but it went all the way left as because parents fought back at that. But at the end of the day, you do need a parent report card.
Well, I mean, and the thing is now, so imagine if they had all the technology today when we were kids,
right?
Because our mama, she used to get on the number 48 bus and take the 48 bus down there to Summit K-12, which is now the building where the Northwest African American Museum is, and she'd take the 48 bus to come to PTA meetings, to be there at the school. Wasn't no Zoom, wasn't no mobile phone or anything. It was a commitment to being like, I'm gonna be in the schoolhouse and see what these kids are doing. There's so many technological tools that parents have these days. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you're not engaging, if you're not engaging, in your child's life, whether it's in school or whether it's seeing if they got a gun in their closet, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, our parents and family, our community needs to step up and be more community.
Well, that's one of the reasons we started 100 Black Parents. We found that there was that disconnect between the building, parents that are working, they're busy, and there's a huge disconnect. And so, we started that to be able to have ways for parents to be able to connect, advocate, have activities, time away from, the hustle and bustle to build relationships with their family. And that's why we launched the African American Males Weekend, African American Females Weekend. And so we just need to do more of those kinds of things to be able to have the arena to convene parents. But that accountability, it all starts at home, like you said.
Right. I would say this, and actually, let me hand one of these producers this call. You got a burning call here from somebody in the field. You see the top number there? Live TV, man. Let me talk about. I think that sometimes as well, people. I'm in love maybe with nostalgic Seattle. I'm learning to love more and more of that every day or whatever, and sometimes on the streams. it's crazy because it'll be going down, as we said, it getting funky, and then me and Bobby Stills will sit and talk about the Mariners or back at the Kingdom, and Gaylord Perry, or watching
big
Junior. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Or man, watching Junior and Senior and going to Kids Day out at remember Kids Day?
Yeah.
Man, Kids Day
Seattle
was a
Center.
kids holiday, man, where everything was all about kids, you know what I'm saying? So many things that make me feel nostalgic about this Emerald City.
Right.
I'm hoping you're running for office. I'm hoping that there's something in your life's journey here in the city. Maybe you could share that looking backwards, but then maybe also looking forward as well.
I'm a huge fan of festivals, and this summer has really put a damper on my heart. We would always march or be a part of the Moja Fest, even Black Community Festival Parade. There's tons of pictures of me in my truck driving with the CD Panthers. Until this year, I hadn't missed a Torchlight Parade.
You guys, your Torchlight game was serious.
Yeah, we're the type that go in the morning at 4 a.m. and put our, we put our chairs out there. So, and then, speaking of the Mariners, just low cost family entertainment where you can take your family in a safe place and be able to have a great time. And Seattle was so good for that with all of the different community parades, our drill teams. You could go down there, make some sandwiches, take some Kool-Aid, and just be there at a low, with the high cost of everything. Right. This is Seattle. Everything costs. Right. We do have a way for a regular family, to kind of get down there, light rail or what have you, and be able to enjoy these festivals and these parades. And we weren't able to do that this summer. And I think that definitely ties into some of the, just the angst in community.
It's crazy. I think, so the M's, they lost again last night. You know what I'm saying? They're 4-8 right now. They're in the
you
bottom.
Love those Mariners.
They're in the cellar of the American League West. But the best thing is they literally got nowhere to go but up, man. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, Daryl. Man, I'm never giving up on my M's.
Well, you know what I love about baseball, honestly, is that I just love going to the games. And, it's a way that you could take a lot of kids to a game for a low price. Right? And a lot of times young kids, I know that you're a super fan and you're watching all the stats and all of that, but a lot of people just want to go to the field and eat a hot dog.
It's such an experience.
Yeah, and watch the game. On an evening with the sun going down, the Safeco, and you can look out and the roof's open. I mean, it's just a great place to be. And it's affordable, right, for families. And so that's what I love about the Mariners, to tell the truth, is just being able to go to the ballpark.
All right, because if you said that you hated the Mariners, then you're definitely not getting my vote. I might even, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah.
Well, you know what I do love about the Mariners, to tell the truth, honestly, okay, so all the game, I know you're, like I said, you're a super fan, and I'm a fan of the experience. But what I can say about the Mariners with conviction is their support of one of my favorite programs, Baseball Beyond Borders. Shout out to Buki Gates and the work that him and Tiger and EC and a lot of folks have been doing about bringing baseball back into our communities. When I was a kid, baseball was a big deal. The Jamboree was a big deal. And especially when you start looking at contact sports and everything else, baseball is on the rise. And so Baseball Beyond Borders is a great program in our community, and it's headed up by a wonderful young man named Buki Gates, Jerron Gates, and he's doing great work.
Right. So one of the things that I talk about, Kun, and we're probably going to let you go here soon, and because of the vote, we're supposed to run a package about the Parks Department, and you actually work at Parks. I think we might actually push that to tomorrow.
Okay.
What's up? You know what I'm saying? We'll see what happens. Talk to the director. So I'm having a bunch of different conversations right now, by the way. I'm talking to Kevin, who's like watching every amendment. He's like, they're voting. I'm watching the directors, the producers.
Right.
We got streamers out there. It's a bunch of stuff that's going
TV.
on. Man, it's just live TV. We're doing it. I talk a lot about maybe restoring a bit of humanity. And we've seen, like, the thing is, like, we've seen even the last few months that when Seattle, and even America, when Seattle wants to show its humanity, it does it maybe better than anywhere else on earth. And we saw that around COVID.
Yeah.
We saw the hashtag, we got this, Seattle.
Yeah.
And you saw a whole nother sense of understanding and patience and listening from people all across different aspects of our society, all across the city here. We saw that,
right?
You know, and so we know what we're possible of here in Seattle, and we know that the humanity is there, and sometimes it just needs to be activated. All of that being said, a lot of times, especially on the live stream, I talk about a Seattle or an Emerald City that we all deserve.
Right.
And that, I think that's really why we've committed with this coverage around this, the protests and everything else, is that we started with it, and now we need to finish with it wherever it goes. I've said a lot to say, for the 37th district, for this district that you want to represent, that you want to have the actual honor and privilege to represent, the very hardworking, diverse people that live in the 37th district, the people who you said that they love their neighborhood, that their biggest fear is actually getting pushed out of a place that they love and enjoy. You know, one of the most diverse zip codes in America is there, and all these people seem to get along.
Right.
You know, what is your vision, though? What is the 37th district that the good people and the voters there, the people who live there, what's the vision of the future that they deserve?
You know, again, I think the vision that that our neighbors and residents and community deserve is a place where we can all not fear of being displaced, right? Where we can live a life where we just have quality services, quality amenities. We have the ability to convene. We have great parks. We have great health care. You know, we have so many home-based early education centers and daycares in our neighborhood. And that we want them to thrive. We have loving places for our children. I think that that's really the 37th that I would like to see, and the folks that I talk to, they're just ready for, they really want to be able to age in place. Like I said, we want to be able to stay in our neighborhood. We want the diversity of our neighborhood, but we want the quality amenities that come with that our neighborhoods that have been gentrified seem to have, right? We want high quality grocery stores. We want high quality transportation. We want to be able to feel safe in our homes. We want our children to go to schools with people that love them and understand them and have some type of cultural competency, right? And so that's what I'm looking for in the vision that I want to see in the 37th as we move forward to November in 2021 and beyond.
Man, well, and look at you. You know, I was always the wordsmith of the family.
Well, I was the doer, okay? So yeah, I'm out here doing it. And you know, and that's really one of the challenges. I appreciate you and the whole Converge team giving me a chance to be able to talk. One of the things I've learned in this campaign, to tell the truth, is that just because I do something doesn't mean that everybody knows about it, right? People don't necessarily know that I'm the labor candidate because, you know, I just kind of assume, well, hey, I've been in unions for 25 years, right? And so, you know, one of the things, and you're right, you have always been the eloquent one and being able to express and talk about it. And I do, right? I most certainly am not the only one in the family that's been doing things, but I've really focused on being a doer over the years. And one of the things I've learned in this campaign, as I've been able to listen to my neighbors and form coalitions, one of the things that people are saying to me is, Chukundi, you have to tell folks about what you're doing and what your team is doing and what the coalition of neighbors and folks that you've been working with are doing. And this most certainly gives me a chance to do that.
Right. Well, I'll definitely say this, is that whether people decide to end up voting for you or voting against you, the best thing that I could say 100% is that you're qualified. You put in the work.
Well, there you go.
You've put in the work. I'm
gonna drink some Chukundi juice.
There you go. Drink well. Drink deep from the well of Chukundi. You've definitely put in the work, and you've earned it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just going to keep running and keep listening and keep working with community. And you know, like I said, I appreciate any opportunities to build with folks. You know, it's been good.
All right.
Good luck.
So, but before we let you go here, actually, I knew you work in the Seattle Parks Department. How many years you been with Parks? Or the
23 years. 23 years.
Old school. Yeah, that was back in the flip phone days. 23 years with the Parks Department. So yesterday, I talked to Andy Sheffer.
Andy Sheffer, yeah, that's my man.
Yeah, Seattle Parks Department, and also talked to an architect named Rico. I know this guy's name. Now you could use it. I'm looking at you, Rico Kiddingdongo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In fact, yeah, that's a different project from mine.
I know how to do my job, right?
I most certainly know Andy Sheffer.
Yeah. Well, Rico is actually an architect with DLR. Worked on a few different projects, including Midtown up there on 23rd and Union.
Right.
And so talk to them, because the big issue right now, one of the big issues, what are you talking about? So many issues. Cal Anderson Park, though. So Cal Anderson Park, I know that in an official capacity, we didn't really see Parks Department around here in the CHOP, and you know, people who didn't necessarily need to be in the CHOP stayed away.
Right.
But you know, we saw public utilities, we saw a lot of other departments. But then we come to find out there was also a tree planting by the employees, by the rank and file over in the Parks Department.
Yeah. So in fact, I'm gonna send you the picture. We and it wasn't just me. It's actually a person who works in the Northwest District whose idea it was. It wasn't my idea at all, but it was the employees in the Parks Division who came together and had what we would call a jamboree, and they cleaned up Cal Anderson Park one day. And they got a tree that was up at Kubota Garden, and we planted it. And I was out there for that.
That was back in the Chaz.
Yeah, that was in the Chaz.
That was back in the Chaz.
It was the wild days.
That was 2 years ago instead of 3 years ago. That's what it feels like, man. That was back in the Chaz.
But that was just the employees that just made that happen. They all came together. And they invited me because I'm actually in a different unit now, but I was in that unit for 20 years, the urban forestry unit. And so they said, hey, you should be a part of this. And I came down and was most certain I got to turn a couple shovels of dirt and help put that tree in. But again, that just speaks to the dedication that our, the rank and file staff at Seattle Parks and Recreation, the dedication that they have to all of these parks. And, I just want to pass that along and salute to them for doing that work.
Right. So like I said, we talked to Andy yesterday, and it looks like Seattle Parks Department wants to be able to talk to the community in whole, not just Capitol Hill, but the community in whole, because Cal Anderson Park now is an international, people all around the world know Cal Anderson Park. And so, but before the city, the Parks Department does anything, what they're saying is they want to be able to reach out to the community and get feedback as to what is it that the community wants to see in Cal Anderson Park. And so, like I said, I caught up with Andy and Rico from DLR. And here's the clip. And by the way, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining me today.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. I love it here.
Yeah, you got to stay there though until the video starts going.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead. All right. So up here, Cal Anderson Park in the back, we have Andy Sheffer from Seattle Parks Department. We have Rico Kiddingdongo from DLR Architect Group. Man, welcome. This is our first time using the rooftop set, so I kind of like it up here. We might have to move our morning show up here. We're gonna jump right into it. Cal Anderson Park, which is now internationally known Cal Anderson Park. Clearly this was the heart of the CHOP when the CHOP was here and everything else, and is still kind of a meeting point for protest that happen here in Seattle. Not even just the protests we've seen here. There's always, people of gathering and things like that. Want to talk to you guys about what are your thoughts on some of the immediate changes to the park? And I bring that up because there's a lot of things that transpired over the last 2 months. There's a lot of events that occurred. There's some structures that have been put in place there. What are some of your thoughts about that?
I think it presents a huge opportunity to get more stakeholders involved in the park. and activation of the park. I think a lot of the interventions are program related, activation oriented, and we can support organizations with support from the community to really take a next step on some of those interventions, whether they need to be finessed within this park setting or another park setting, or and kind of pilot them after we go through the process.
Right, and let me jump right in there. So for people, Andy works for the city, so they have all these city terms. So when you talk about interventions, you're talking about when Chop was here, there's Marcus had the garden that was over there, and there was the Conversation Cafe. It was sitting down there. There were certain things that kind of sprouted up organically by the people that were over there. Those are some of the interventions that you're talking about, right? Okay, right. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, since COVID and since the George Floyd murder and protests, there's been a whole different conversation around equity in public space. And I think that, what we saw with the Chaz and the Chop was us taking back the streets and occupying space as our own and reinterpreting it through our own eyes. And I think that the opportunity here, working with the City of Seattle and working with parks, is how do we not only memorialize what has happened here, but how do we keep it moving forward? And I think that's, as we convene a community conversation around that, I think we really need to hear from people what they want to see happen.
Well, so that's the thing, is that nobody likes government coming in and saying this is what we're gonna do, this is what we're gonna have to do. So I'm assuming that from parks, the big push from your end is to really engage the community. You want the community input, and you really want to be able to implement the community's guidance around this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think the strength in the process is what happens in between the meetings. We'll have our first meeting, collect ideas, frame the project, and then after that first meeting, conduct interviews, surveys, tours of the park, and then the next meeting will prioritize those ideas and synthesize those ideas in conjunction with a site analysis, kind of filter the ideas through the physical constraints in the park, and then again more interviews supporting those ideas, nurturing those ideas, and then the last meeting is to really develop an implementation plan for the ideas that raise to the top.
Right, and so all of this is along this is how you're going to synthesize the term you use. I know you work for the city. You're going to take the information that the public is giving you. And again, this issue around Cal Anderson Park, and even we saw that with some of the art that was around here and everything else, it's a lot of the general public, just dealing with government in general. You know what I'm saying? You hear people come, they're, we're going to do this, we're going to list it, we're going to do whatever, and then a lot of times things just go and die. To be honest with you, when it's no longer a top level issue, people forget about it, gets buried in City Hall, and things don't happen. What's your commitment to seeing this process through, especially now if you're saying that you want the public to be engaged in this process? How committed are you at Parks to seeing this process through?
We're definitely committed. And again, I think the most important part of the process is the interviews and the surveys, meeting face to face with the interested community members, really centering on the BIPOC population, the LGBTQIA population.
And I also think that in order for that to be authentic, we have to repeat it back, right? So like a traditional call and response where we're going to set the table, have a conversation that or we can hear from people what happened and what was just the experience of what has happened over the course of the Chaz and the Chop, but even long before that. And with that foundation, then start a new discussion about what we want to do next.
Right, and you just mentioned earlier, you talk about equity in public spaces and things like that. I think that some people might agree that Cal Anderson is a place for everybody. Some people might not agree. You know, a lot of people might feel that about a lot of different parks across the city of Seattle. You might think, oh, well, that's people for that neighborhood, or that's the people for that group, or whatever. What are you guys doing to build a sense of equity and belonging in Cal Anderson Park right here specifically, and maybe even other parks around the city?
You know, I think it starts with the project engagement process and making sure you have a multicultural team, that the ideas are coming from the respective cultures and groups, to ensure that everyone's ideas of what a sense of belonging means are represented.
Well, and people need to feel like they're welcome and that they are seen and that they're heard. And I think that the conversation right now has to be, what does that look like without assumption? And I think for every neighborhood that's going to look a little different, and for each of our communities that we're trying to serve, that's also going to look different.
Right. Protest season, as we call it over here, you know, it's really put a spotlight on protests in public spaces. When I talked to SPD, they told me that, you know, every year there's about 300 protests every year. Before all of this, people in Seattle will protest about any of this, the nature of the city. But what's your thoughts on something like Cal Anderson Park or other parks or public spaces being a place where people can assemble peacefully and protest?
I mean, I think we all absolutely agree they should be the most democratic space in the city. And for that to really be successful, we got to limit both the physical and psychological barriers as much as possible. So that speaks to the sense of belonging. That also speaks to, obviously, just pure physical barriers. You can look down at Cal Anderson. I mean, obviously, Bobby Morris fulfills an important function, but we have all that fencing that creates an impediment. So we got to think about that in all of the park designs.
Well, and I think there's a lot of questions there around wellness and safety, right? Like, can we gather? Can we celebrate each other and have our voices heard and not have to worry about, you know, getting arrested or having our, you know, gathering shut down? And I think that has to be a part of the conversation about where do we stand with all of that today, and how do we make more space, psychological space, so that we know that it is something that can be sustained over a long period of time.
Right, and I like I said, I think it's important people realize, like I said, over 300 protests a year here in Seattle. And when you're talking about a place where, although we're in these Black Lives Matters protests right now, when you're talking about a place for protests, it is a place for protests of people of wherever they're at on the spectrum. It's a public place, it's the public park, and so you talk about Cal Anderson Park being a place where people can safely assemble and protest. That's for anybody, for whoever they want to protest, right? Let's see here. This is something that we see that creates some kind of barriers a lot of times in between, like, government and street level, is the language used, the assumptions made, and everything else. And I find that a lot of times even well-intending civil servants, with the best intentions, things, because of messaging and the way that it's communicated, it's either met abrasively in the community or, again, just goes and dies. How important is it that in approaching this project that you guys are really using the language that resonates with the population that you're trying to reach?
I mean, language matters. You should talk.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And It speaks to it speaks to the engagement process and centering the underheard populations. It speaks to the design process and making sure that the design is led from a multicultural standpoint.
Well, and I don't. We won't start. We'll start the process just by listening.
I think there you go, right. So maybe even less language from government. My mama always says, son, that's why you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you can listen more than talk. So is that basically what you're trying to achieve here with these sessions? It isn't so much Parks telling people X, Y, and Z. You guys are here to listen.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be honest. That in a time of COVID, having to do virtual convening is hard, because having that more like in a conversation circle and just everyone, like even just going around the room and everybody being able to speak their piece in their own language, in their own way, like it is extremely difficult to do that in a virtual environment. And so I don't think that it will be as vibrant a virtual space as if we were literally doing it in person in the park. But I think that what we want to capture is what are individuals' thoughts, what do people think about where we are at, and then how can we take that initial input and then start to change how we think about what happens next.
Right. It's kind of interesting that these protests, this is, like I said, Cal Anderson. If people didn't know Cal Anderson Park before, or even the legacy of Cal Anderson before, not only just here in Seattle, but literally around the world, a lot of people have researched that. It's interesting because Cal Anderson, when he was in office and really lived his life, he was a trailblazer. The first openly gay member of the legislature. A lot of crossover with Cal Anderson and the black community. Cal Anderson was one of the people who were like, well, you know what? We need to make sure that the black community is their rights are being served, because if not, how can we have an expectation for LGBTQ community? And so I wonder, Cal Anderson's looking down now, and be like, wow, all these years later, this is a park named in his name, in his honor, was a flashpoint of something, that's here that clearly the Parks Department is going to memorialize.
Well, and I think celebration of the LGBTQIA community it is an ongoing discussion, an ongoing celebration. I think what we see in the park now and what we've seen for years in terms of celebrations, community events, have all been, well, it's what we want to see and what we want to do. But I think the opportunity now is looking through a different lens and looking through the lens of Black Lives Matters. Here, like I think it's going to look a little bit different.
Big event has been planned for the last 2 years. Celebration of Jimi Hendrix, again an icon from the Central District. Everything else, and where the community is feeling some kind of way because it's the Parks Department has pulled the permit for the event that's supposed to occur in September at Jimi Hendrix Park. Can you give us some information as to why the Parks Department made that decision, and what are the parameters around it?
So I checked into that, and my understanding is that all permits are put on hold until 2 weeks prior to the event, at which point the permitting group checks the governor's guidelines and makes
All right,
sure
so it looks like we got to cut the conversation short here because we're going to go into coverage over at City Hall. It's kind of a gamble here whether we're going to be able to play the full clip or not. But what we'll do is we'll put the second part in there for tomorrow. But the big thing is here with Parks, they're out here. They're trying to really get the community input and everything else as to what can happen at Cal Anderson. There's actually a Zoom call today. Today is a busy day in Seattle. There's a Zoom call today. There's all this other stuff that's happening today. There's the city council is actually voting right now. Kevin keeps sending me these text messages like, man, the amendments are up. This amendment, that amendment. Excited to talk to him. We got Eric Calligraphy and Big Jake. They're out there. There's the protests occurring right now. A march from the youth jail down to the city of Seattle. So we definitely want to keep the conversation about parks moving forward. But we're going to get out of here.
Yeah,
Let's
we got to
take this stand.
Yeah.
All right, so lots of stuff going on today. We're back live again as soon as the city council ends voting. We've got Eric Calligraphy who's out there live streaming as part of the protest march that's going from the youth jail to City Hall. We're going to check in with him when we come back live. We're back again tomorrow. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. We're going to have a lot of news for everybody. Yeah. You are watching. No, I've got it out of order. My fault, ladies. First, I got to say, is there anything else you have to say?
No, not at all, man. Time to get out there, man. Lots going on. Busy day.
All right. We're going to get out of here until tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the Morning Update Show. Peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.